So I always start by asking one pertinent question. Are some of the biggest global problems that we are facing? And most of the time, I always hear the same answers, such as water, poverty, health, education, and lately climate change has become fashionable. And political, religious, and racial tolerance. And all these 6 things align very well with some of the global experts at United Nations or World Economic Forum, which shows that we all are today very well aware of the global problems. But the real problem starts when I ask how many of us are doing anything to solve these. Only a few to no hands go up. And why is this the case? When we are aware of the problems, when we have the talent, resources, we've taken the biggest moonshots as human beings, why can't we tackle something which is as earthly as these? And it has been solved for billions of people, but it's only a few billion who are left. So what stops us from doing it? So I started looking at some of the brightest minds in the world. Right? We all know him, one of the genius entrepreneurs that we've known of. What problem did he solve for us? He had the talent, the resources, one of the best minds. He could literally look into the future, not only look into the future, he could actually design the future. We are all carrying something or the other that he has influenced in our lives, in our pockets today. But what problem did that solve? He designed this music system which allowed us to carry 1,000 songs in our pocket. Was it a problem that any of us were facing? Was it a problem that we listed down here? So the best minds in the world are not solving the biggest problems while they should be. And why is it that they are not doing it? Because we think we have been given this belief system that solving these problems is difficult. It requires experience, it requires resources, which we don't have at our disposal. Another person, equally genius, when he had no resources, he didn't even complete his education, he built the largest software company in the world. All of us use this software till today. He made so much money that for decades he's been the richest person in the world. And he very smartly said a few years ago that I'll tackle some of these problems. And he built the biggest foundation, the richest foundation in the world, about a decade ago. He had the resources, he had the money, he had access to talent. In a decade, what problem has that foundation solved? It has helped millions of people, for sure, but has it solved the same scale of problem the way he could build the software company? Why is there this gap then? He knows how to do it, he's done it before. What keeps us from doing and not being able to solve the problems? And it's our belief that experience is important to solve the problems, but in reality it's the passion and enthusiasm of starting something new without resources which actually excels us to innovate, to be creative. If you look at some of the largest retailers in the world today, they hire the top business graduates coming out of our schools. We spend anywhere on an average about 28 years of our time, money, and investments in making these business graduates graduate from these top schools. They go to these e-retailers, they're given all the resources at their disposal, and what are they made to do? Take your prime services from 48 hours and make them reduce to 24 hours? Take the business models working in the United States, bring them to India? Are these the most difficult problems that the best talent in the world, where we've invested 28 years of our time, money, and energy, need to be solving? Shouldn't they be doing something more creative with the knowledge and the talent that they've acquired, the resources that they have to their disposal? And when it comes to doing something creative, a lot of times the corporate pressures makes us do things wrongly. If you would remember a couple of years ago, some of the German auto car makers rigged the environmental laws in the United States. More than 8 million cars were on the road spewing 40 times the amount of emissions that were permissible. What happened to these companies? A few billion dollars in fine, a few people had to resign, but none of the customers got lost. We didn't vote with our pockets and not buy these cars anymore. None of the employees who had bought into the system of these companies, their corporate responsibilities, their ethics, we didn't quit our jobs. The brand values are so strong that we remain attached even though the ethics may be compromised. Because we love having access to resources, and we've been trained that resources are needed for us to live in today's time. I'll give you another example. A lot of these smart people and smart leaders and smart corporations, they knew something was not right. So we came up with this idea of corporate social responsibility, that we should do something good as well, while we are doing a lot of bad stuff. I'll give you a personal example. World's largest fast food chain, which makes so many burgers every day, that if they want to feed, they can feed 1% of the population of the world every day. So market and growth is really not an issue for them. So their corporate social responsibility team came up with the idea of teaching something about food, because it has to be related to their business, right? And what could they teach about food, about healthy food, which they don't produce, but they had to teach others about healthy food. And this is a real story. I've got a 2-year-old son who goes to a daycare in Singapore. So they sent a person dressed in yellow and red colors to my son's daycare when he was 2 years old to teach him about healthy food habits, to teach him about salad, fruits, and vegetables. Does anybody here believe that a 2-year-old can learn these things? My son came back, and the only thing he learned was a red and yellow clown. So the corporate social responsibility, is it really working? Because businesses are beautifully designed for a very single focused purpose of creating profit from every dollar that is spent every time. We just can't be altruistic if we are in business. And it's not that something what I'm saying today is new. The smart leaders, these corporations, this talent, they understood it's not working. And they came up with this idea a couple of years ago. Some CEOs of some of the largest corporations got together, and I know this because I was one of the mentors in the program. And they said, we need to hone new future leaders who would understand the purpose, would have the background in business, and will design new businesses which will actually transform the future societies. 25 of the most talented future CEOs came together on a 1-year program, zipping across the world's top cities, being mentored by the top CEOs. And they came up with this brilliant idea at the end of it, to go to rag pickers in certain cities, teach them skills how to convert rag into bags and other sellable products, and sell them in boutiques in New York and Paris. How much income do you think a rag picker can increase with a skill like that? Even if I say you can double the guy's income from $1 to $2, how much income would be increasing for the guys who are selling it in New York and Paris? Do we know the inequality gap which has just been going up and up? These are the reasons when it comes to looking for solutions for the poor, we always look for poor solutions. While we want for our kids to learn AI, we want the poor to learn skills in handicrafts, and I have nothing against it. But if we want to solve these problems, we need to rethink our systems that have been taught to us. So talk is cheap, right? I can talk these things for hours, and it could be fun. But what have I done? I'm an architect by background, and in my 10 years of professional career, I designed over 10,000 homes for people who worked in these corporations. Never for those who actually needed one. So 4 years ago, I quit my job, and I founded a nonprofit innovation studio. The only reason I say innovation, because unless you say innovation today, nobody listens to you. And I started designing, innovating homes for the homeless with a simple principle that we will never design poorly for the poor. We look at the homeless not as our beneficiaries, but as our customers. And we worked in Cambodia, India, Malaysia, designing schools, toilets, homes, everywhere. But the real stuff I want to talk to you about which happened soon after I started the organization in 2013. And a lot of you would know about this incident in Muzaffarnagar riots in 2013. It's one of the worst communal riots India saw after independence. 50,000 people had been rendered homeless. They were living outside their towns and villages. This is an actual picture of how they were actually living there. 30 children died because of nothing but cold. Can you imagine in 21st century, we don't have the ability to save children from as trivial as cold? A lot of us, I'm sure, donate our warm clothes and blankets or give money to NGOs every year after year to protect these people. How our lives have changed in 10 years with the kind of technology we carry, but when it comes to giving and helping the poor, we don't question the NGOs and governments by saying that they are not changing their methodologies and they're not looking for something new. So we said, and I was excited because I had started a new organization, that we will look at this as something to solve. So I designed these tents called Weatherhide, which work on the simple principle of trapping up families' body heat to keep them warm and safe. These were not value engineered to make cheaper, workable for the poor, but they were designed for the homeless. We gave these to 15 families in Delhi and Mumbai in 2015, and we put a few videos out on social media. They went viral. We hit 40 million views in about 6 to 8 weeks. We raised more funding on Kickstarter, and people like Ashton Kutcher called it innovation at its finest. Do you really think Weatherhide was innovation at its finest? Of course not. Heck no. It was the only innovation. What we are doing, we are so monopolistic that we don't have any benchmarks against us. Helping 15 families gave us so much exposure because the competition we have is zero. If I had designed 15 homes in my 3 years of career as an architect, I would have been fired and jobless by now. But here I was being celebrated for helping 15 families. And you know what happens to monopolies. Go and look in Detroit. They become arrogant, they stop innovating, they kill themselves. So we started with innovation, but we won't be innovative if we become monopolistic. The last thing I want to talk about is pressure for perfection. So when I tell people I design homes for the homeless, people always come and ask me, so how do you provide for water? What happens to jobs for those people? Where do they go for healthcare services? What happens to the kids' education? What materials do you use? Do you really think a small organization can solve it, which is just doing homes for the homeless? But when it comes to solving global problems, we want to solve all the problems, not just one problem. Because we think that's the way to solve the problems. But you go to a developer in Pune who builds homes, do we ever ask these questions to them? They are razor-sharp focus, and that's what gives them scale. So a few weeks ago, I was talking about my Weatherhide tents at a university in Singapore, and a professor asked me, what is the end-of-life cycle scenario for Weatherhides? A very genuine question. We are manufacturing currently 500 of them. So what will happen? Will they get into landfill? It's a huge environmental issue, right? But that's a question which we should ask to 2 billion bottles, to organizations that have billions of dollars, all the money in the world to research, to solve this issue. But we don't. But to nonprofits and to organizations which are trying to solve them, we burden them with the pressure for perfection, day in and day out. And these are some of the reasons I believe we are not able to actually solve the problem. We look for experience, not enthusiasm. We look for resources, not risk. We know risk fuels innovation and creativity. We don't want the nonprofits to be singularly focused. And we often help poor by thinking that they need our help, but they've never come to us for help. Did anybody come ever to say that increase my income, please? We don't want monopoly, we want competition. When we solve these issues, people say you should always collaborate and partner, because that's the way to go. But collaborations and partnerships come at a huge cost. It takes time, money, energy. Competition makes us run much faster. And that's what's missing. And the key thing which is missing, and which is what I'm talking about, is not about helping a few people. I'm talking about scale of change. I'm talking about dominating these issues, just like how we talk about our Google and Amazon dreams. We have to end this, and we have to unravel this within ourselves. Because we know that we spend 99% of our time working in these corporations and making money, but when we come on stages like this, we talk about our values and the 1% time we want to spend with the underprivileged. Can we change ourselves and think about increasing that 1% time to something larger? Talks like this typically end with something positive to show that the solution's there in the future, right? We like everything positive, but I don't want to do that today. I want you to go back, think about these things, and really come up with ideas of how we would change the world forever. Thank you.